Invincible just premiered its third season with a surprising 3-episode drop on the first night, setting the stage for an interesting season with a focus on Mark becoming more like his father as he tries to raise his younger brother and Mark turning against Cecil. Now, season 2 left us over a year ago with what felt like very little development in the actual Invincible plot. Invincible is really meant to feel like a greater universe like Marvel or DC all in one show, and while it has the main plot of Mark dealing with the coming invasion of the Viltrumites, that perhaps actually gets the least amount of focus. This was not great for season 2, which didn't air until 2.5 years after season 1's finale in 2021. This made season 2 feel very anticlimactic after a long wait, with Omni-Man having just enough screen time to realize that he may not want to be a genocidal alien, before getting locked up in space prison. Season 3 now has managed to air just about a year since the season 2 finale. Pretty fast compared to the gap between seasons 1 and 2, but some fans may still be disappointed that season 3 is doing a lot of the same things season 2 did, though I'm definitely finding this arc a lot more kick-ass. Instead of a 1-episode premiere this year, the audience was given 3 episodes all in one go, as a sort of sign that the network is perhaps scared about what the show is doing. Episode 2 was by far the most fun of the 3 episodes, and it makes sense that after a rocky release history, they may have wanted to get this episode out to show people what the season had in store, as episode 1 doesn't quite set all this up. So far, the actual Viltrumite plot is being kept locked up, just like Omni-Man, in the space prison where he's being held with Alan the Alien. On Earth, the story is focusing more on Mark trying to help prepare for the eventual conflict by training under the direction of Cecil. Thanks to some cool technology and large-scale training sessions, Mark is able to increase the power of his super abilities to new extremes, guaranteeing he'll be able to help against the Viltrumite army. Cecil's goal, however, is to use Mark just as one piece to a larger puzzle to win this battle, which will include many Viltrumites and perhaps other strong species that they have enslaved against as many Earth heroes as they can unite. The problem is that this season is focusing on this plan falling apart already, and while there still will be some sort of team to stand against Viltrum, it doesn't look like it's going to be this cohesive planned effort with what Cecil brings to the table. Cecil can't fight the way heroes like Mark can, but he has a great mind for figuring out both strengths and weaknesses. And in the opening moments of the season, he's already increased Mark's super strength by 134% thanks to his training sessions. Cecil would be very important to figuring out how to use every superhero's abilities to get a greater plan in place instead of just a straightforward battle. But thanks to Mark, this doesn't seem to be coming together. Mark has had an interesting arc in the last 2 seasons where he's becoming more like his father in ways, and from the get-go, he's being aggressive to villains even when he maybe shouldn't. We see this when he attacks Duplicate's brother, being unnecessarily harsh in front of Kate and then insisting that he has to do this while arresting him for his role in trying to steal the Declaration of Independence. This isn't surprising after the season 2 finale, which had Mark killing Angstrom after he was pushed too far. Angstrom was after Mark's mother and was just a hard to beat villain in general without actually killing him. Mark was still upset that he had to do this, but after making it back to his home reality, he seems to be jumping to different extremes trying to deal with this. In some ways, he seems to be inching closer to doing it again, being more aggressive and perhaps more violent. But he's also trying to punish others for what he did to Angstrom, insisting that he had no choice but to do this and going out of his way to punish people who have killed others in the past. Mark's battle with Angstrom was a pretty cool finale for its arc, but it was an arc that a lot of people felt was just a distraction from the main Viltrumite plot, which doesn't always have to be the focus, but it's what a lot of fans are just salivating at the glands for. With that in mind, the strength of this season is that this plot with Mark takes the conflict against Viltrum and makes it internal. Instead of just fighting a random side villain, the villain becomes each other, Mark versus Cecil, and the 2 groups that are inevitably going to form because of this. With Mark wanting to attack people that have killed in the past, however, it makes it hard for him to work with Cecil, who is happy to rehabilitate villains who have killed people to try and use them for good. Unfortunately, Mark seems to believe that this takes away the value of the lives lost before their supposed conversion. Mark wants to see these people punished, but Cecil's goal is to try to get the most out of everything instead of what we might think of as the relative moral good. While we generally want justice against people who have committed murder and especially large-scale murder, Cecil realizes that he can take a lot of these people's skills skills and abilities and make the world much better than if he just locked them in a prison. This can be done by force, and he's not afraid to use certain technology against Mark even when he begins to act out. But even when this happens, he seems to like to give people the opportunity to change and grow, to do things because they want to, and to see the ideas they had to implement change in the world happen by working through Cecil against greater villains. Episode 1 ends with Mark wanting to confront Cecil about his use as villains for heroes, but Cecil escapes to a room that is set up to protect him from an altercation with Mark and his powers. Episode 2 then picked up here, but also with flashbacks to Cecil's past, where we learn that he used to be a lot more like Mark. When he was younger, Cecil worked for the man who once held his job at the DGA, Director Radcliffe. At this time, Radcliffe was able to rehabilitate 2 supervillains who had previously almost killed Cecil and who had killed 17 others on a mission that would have killed even more if Cecil hadn't gotten there when he did. When Cecil sees these villains are now working for Radcliffe, he decides to open fire on them, killing them both. It's here we get to see the interesting transformation of Cecil from the younger version of himself that was more like Mark, to the man who Radcliffe would see as a good replacement for himself. After killing the villains, Radcliffe puts Cecil into a prison with their greatest supervillains. He tells Cecil it's to punish him, but he believes that Cecil will learn to negotiate peace among the inmates when he's stuck in the same system as him, and of course this turns out to be true. It teaches him to be manipulative, but also in a good way, one that leads to peace even if it means compromising on your immediate morals from moment to moment. This transformation doesn't just mirror Mark's transformation, but it mirrors the transformation of people and groups in general, and thus also the Viltrumites. The Viltrumites present themselves as ultimately wanting peace, wanting every world to be under their rule in what does appear to be rather peaceful societies. No matter how much the people seem to be willing to surrender, however, there always seems to be some kind of struggle, where the local planet has to be showed their place in the hierarchy of the universe. Eventually, this can lead to great and happy societies under Viltrum, but they will always remember the original slaughter that had to remind them of their place in the hierarchy. Cecil's story shows us how even humans on Earth go through this on a personal scale, and with enough time and resources, it's pretty certain that a mind like Cecil's would continue to expand territory outward until he had established an ultimate peace in the universe, just like the Viltrumites are trying to do. Cecil wants to use peace, as we said, but when someone doesn't allow it, he is willing to use force, such as we saw when he outright controls Mark using the device they implanted in his head during a previous surgery. This led to a tiny civil war happening when Mark goes to the Guardians of the Globe begging for their help, and they choose to side with him over Cecil. Robot is thankfully able to disconnect Cecil's control over the device in Mark's head, thanks to his ability to hack. This led to Mark not just quitting Cecil's agency, but threatening to kill Cecil if he comes near his family. And perhaps more importantly, it led to the current Guardians of the Globe quitting as well, at least most of them. The younger members from the team had more naturally felt that Cecil was overstepping his power, with the episode focusing a lot on characters like Rex complaining about the lack of funding for their team in favor of Mark, with Mark choosing to just mend the dynamic with Rex and even invite him to help with the mission. The real kicker was we got interesting parallels of Mark and his father fighting in the Guardian of the Globe's headquarters. Mark is becoming more like his father, as we said, and as he tears apart the mutant cyborgs in the Guardians of the Globe headquarters, it's hard not to imagine Omni-Man doing the same thing to the actual Guardians of the Globes themselves all the way back in episode 1 of season 1. Cecil even uses this time to comment on how Mark looks just like his father. It set season 3 up to be about these heroes trying to figure out their lives without their big government daddy Cecil there to help them, but also not having him there to manipulate or control them. Seasonal plot aside, we're also just getting to the good part in Mark's arc of realizing he can't be the perfect comic book hero that he imagined. After seeing that this is something Cecil went through as well, it's becoming clear that this is something every single character in the show has to go through. The fact that no matter how powerful they aren't powerful enough to control the world in some perfect, peaceful way. At least not without doing it with some bigger team that wants to do it in more corrupt or violent ways. This was further explored in these 3 episodes, with Mark acting like a father figure to his rapidly growing younger brother, Oliver. Oliver's development and dive into the superhero world is a dark mirror to what Mark went through back in season 1. Mark and Oliver both worshipped the idea of superheroes, with both looking up to their father figure as the ideal hero. In both cases, however, they become disappointed with their reality, Mark learning his father is a murderer, and Oliver realizing that Mark refuses to kill. This starts with Oliver being disappointed that bad guys got away when Mark was on a mission, wanting to have used his own powers to stop them at all costs. When Mark begins training Oliver to be a hero, however, things quickly escalate when he starts saying that he would have killed Cecil after everything he had done. Despite this horrible threat, episode 3 had Mark deciding that Oliver is ready to learn how to be a hero since he is already developing his powers. Mark sees this as an opportunity to be the father to Oliver that Omni-Man was not to him. To let Oliver become the hero Mark imagined himself becoming before he started to realize how dark the world of superheroes is. The problem is that Oliver still leans into his desire to kill instead of just to save, painting himself as a younger version of Omni-Man instead of a young version of Invincible. This culminates with Oliver refusing not to help in battle and eventually killing one of the clones without thinking it's an issue. It was really haunting seeing the two playing baseball together the way that Mark and Omni-Man did when he was younger, when he wanted to be like his dad, but they began to argue about certain differences. Mark thought things would be easier with another half Viltrumite, but something about Oliver's fast development has made him toxically like his father. He wants to be a hero like Mark wanted, but Oliver acts more like the other versions of Mark from the other dimensions, the ones who more blindly followed their father and seem to want to be a hero because of the honor instead of the desire to be good like our Mark Grayson. Oliver, meanwhile, seems to want to be a hero, but because others will see him as great. He seems to want to also have peace, don't get me wrong, but what he really wants is an outlet for his violence. And on top of that, people respecting him or even loving him because of his violence and how he uses it to save the day. While I'm beginning to understand the appeal of things like the Angstrom arc, the fun of superheroes for me is more so about how different identities can clash when working towards similar goals. I haven't read the comics yet, so don't spoil it for anyone, but let me know your thoughts on the new episodes in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys next time.
Well, 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 if it isn't my arch rival, Racer Rabbit. Shady the Bat, you're here for the magic crystal as well?
Careful, Racer! He almost beat you last time.
I guess we'll have no choice but to battle till the very end, our hands all over each other. No homo. There is no homo that I fear. Well then, may the best homo win!
Wait, what did you say?